welcome to the Online Church Blueprint, your source and your home for the best how-tos in the online church space. I am Andy. I am one of the hosts here, and it is so cool to be starting this journey with you. The Online Church Blueprint is a podcast about how to get your church up and running, specifically your online or digital presence in your church. And as you'll hear through this very first conversation with myself and my co-host Mark Lutz of Lux Digital Church, we're going to kind of get into a little bit of why we are doing this podcast, why we're partnering with Ultra Live and the Digital Church Network and the Church Digital and really all of our friends through that network to bring you ostensibly one of the blueprints on how to get your church, your digital church up and running. The thing that happens a lot of times is that we start these podcasts and as a church we go, man, it would be great to put a sermon up, or man, it would be great to talk with, our youth pastor or our children's pastor. And it's great for the insiders, but what about the people who are outside of the church? What about the people who are looking for education, looking for tips and tricks and things that are going to help them do church better, especially in the online space? And so that's what this show is all about. You'll be able to gather with myself and Mark twice a month to start, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. We'll provide links, and towards the end of each show and in the show notes or the doodly-doos below, you'll be able to find a handy-dandy checklist of all of the things that we are talking about so that you yourself can really get your online church or your digital presence or your small group meetings or whatever you're going to be doing up and running. In this very first episode, Mark and I are really talking about the basics, and that is this: how do you get digital small groups up and running? One other thing that's going to help you in this journey as well is an invitation to Digital Church Network's community that we've called FAM. And it's really, that. It is a family. It is a gathering of people, of leaders, of mentors, of pastors, of online church nerds, of digital church people, and really people all across the spectrum of church that want to support you, that want to help you. That link is going to be right below where you can join FAM. Also, we're going to be talking about Ultra Live, a platform that has really revolutionized the digital church space. It brings all of the best, online church engagement tools right to the forefront in all really one seamless package. There's going to be a free 14-day trial down in the comments below, in the links below, in the chat below, or if you are listening to this in an audio podcast form, in whatever podcast player, you'll be able to open up your show notes and you'll find all of those links. So, without further ado, here's my very first conversation with our good buddy Mark Lutz in episode 1. Well, thanks for joining us here on the Online Church Blueprint. I am Andy Mage. That way, whichever way I'm putting this in the recording, either right or left or up or down, is our good buddy Mark Lutz from Lux Digital Church. How are you, man?
Bro, I'm good. It's good to be here. It's good to be here on the inaugural first episode of the Church Blueprint podcast. Wait, is it the Digital Church Blueprint podcast?
The Online Church Blueprint.
I would be good if if we're doing a podcast together, knowing what the name is for the first episode is a great idea. That's where we should start.
I agree, except, we can kind of just we're making this up as we go along anyway, so...
We haven't technically typed the title in anywhere, so,
I have graphics, but, we can change those around if we need to. They were just made by a designer, so whatever. Yeah, the Online Church Blueprint is kind of the best church how-to on the internet. It's really a podcast, as we've talked about in the intros and all of this. It's a podcast that's designed to get you and either your digital church presence or your physical church that wants a digital presence up and running with some real practical tips. A lot of times we listen to church podcasts and they're either sermons or it's the youth pastor who's telling us why TikTok usage needs to go up, or it's some weird thing happening with theology. And so we kind of wanted to scrape all of that away today and really bring you some hard and fast tips and tricks and rules for bringing your digital church presence up and running. And Mark, you are obviously the lead pastor of Lutz Digital Church. You have such a large hand in what's going on in the digital church sphere. And today, we're going to be talking about digital small groups, specifically how to do digital small groups the right way, as we call it, the quote-unquote right way. So before we even get there, talk to me a little bit about digital small groups in Lutz. Like, what are you guys doing? How does it all work? What does the group sphere look like for you?
It's a really great question. And I'm sure like this will become a reoccurring theme throughout the show because there's so much of, I think, the digital church that needs to and should revolve around a really robust, healthy small group ministry. It's not that this is surprising to anybody, right? It's like for the last how many years, everyone's been saying like, you need to get everybody in a small group, right? I was a small groups pastor before I started Lutz. And so, as the guy who ran the small groups, right, like we did the sticky church thing and really ran with a lot of the stuff that had come out of that movement and researched a lot of churches. Like, they had numbers in small groups that were higher than, weekly attendances and services and stuff. So it's no surprise that a robust small group system is important. And I want to give this disclaimer here on episode 1, too, because a lot of what we've been doing for the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, is really a lot of pioneering work. There's not a lot of people who are doing digital-only expressions of church. So every element of what we're doing as a church, and you'll see a lot of one-for-ones in our experience from physical church to this, a lot of the things that we've been working with are experimental in many ways. And when you're the first one to draw the map, right, you draw the map while you're adventuring, right? When Lewis and Clark crossed the mountains, they didn't grab a map and be like, this is how we get across the mountains. They drew a map as they went. And if they drew a map that led to them falling off a cliff, then that would have been bad. Luckily, they didn't do that, and so we followed their map, right? And so the truth is that we're pioneering and we're cartographing, right? Cartographerizing.
Oh, good, you got it, nailed it.
Yes, I knew I figured it out. English is what I'm the best at, and so it's like it's one of these things where like we're drawing the map as we're learning the territory, as we're surveying the terrain, as we're like getting up on the hillside and we're like, okay, that's where the lowland is, and that's going to be really hard to climb, and we're going to do all of those things. We're drawing that out as we're going in many ways. And so I just keep telling people, I met with somebody literally earlier today that's like, we'd like to get into gaming ministry and online ministry. But great. Like, here's what we've learned. I hope I'm not leading you to a cliff. And so that is kind of like where we are. But small group ministries at Lutz has really been the same. And if you, as any other church does small group ministry, and especially if you continue to do small group ministry throughout the pandemic, because the pandemic forced many of us to go into Zoom groups and most people learn how to use Zoom groups. And so everyone just downloaded Zoom and they met on Zoom, and every church got a Zoom account. That's what we did. And it worked pretty well, actually, in all things considered. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the tools that we're using. But if you did small groups during the pandemic, there's a lot of things that you can implement instead of being like, how do we reinvent the wheel? What I found with digital church and digital ministry is you say, no, like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel of what's core to small groups. Getting people in relationships, getting people growing together, getting people sharing their lives with one another, getting people supporting one another through prayer. Those things are all the same. The question just becomes, okay, well, we have to be outside the box because our people aren't physically near one another. What tools do we need to use to do all of the things that we're already doing with small groups well inside of our church families? How do we do those things with people who can't physically meet with our family but consider themselves part of our family is really what we're going to get into.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating look at kind of the insides of a church that is primarily meeting on Discord and still launching out into other tools, especially at the very beginning. We'll talk a little bit, like you said, about Discord and Zoom and kind of some of the other things, Altar Live notwithstanding, in the future. But to kind of circle around to the very beginning of our checklist, and you'll be able to find the checklist down in the show notes, in the doodly doos below, wherever. And if you are in the podcast, if you are listening to this in the podcast sphere, you'll be able to find this in your app, wherever you're looking at it. I'm going to have a link there for kind of a checklist. Each and every episode, we want to provide you some real tangible steps. And as Mark said, this is kind of pioneering everything that we're doing, especially what Lutz is doing. But everything that we're doing in the digital church space, everything in the online world is kind of pioneering. None of these are super hard and fast rules. These are just kind of what we have trialed and we have done through a lot of this, and what we have found through conversations with other pastors, other leaders, other discipleship groups, things that have worked, almost best practices. We're finally at that area of the bell curve, of the curve of innovation, where we're getting to the point where there is going to be a healthy middle. You know, the curve of innovation, you have kind of your early adopters, you have the bleeding edgers, and you have your early adopters. And so we're kind of on the upslope still. We've gotten to that point, especially with the pandemic, where we're starting to codify and really cement some things that work. So for today, when we talk about doing digital small groups the right way, the first thing we really want to do is we want to clarify the vision of your groups. We want to clarify the vision of what it is that either you or your lead pastor, or if you are the lead pastor, kind of what God is telling you, or your board of elders or your council, or whatever your leadership structure says. You need to clarify the vision of your groups. You don't want to make it a sales pitch. You don't want to have to go to people and be like, hey, if you join our groups, you're, for the low price of $19.95, you're going to get Jesus in your life. It's not that. You need to make sure, unless you are doing that, in which case,
those people usually go to jail eventually.
Yeah.
Usually,
I've watched a couple of documentaries about that.
That's usually not the only wrong thing that they're doing.
Can I put that on the checklist too? Make sure you're not selling your groups.
Yeah.
But you need to ask yourself, what are your groups designed to do? Who are you trying to reach? Are your groups for learning? Are they for community? Are they for discipleship? Are they for all of the above? Are they for none of the above? Are you just trying to establish youth groups? Are you trying to establish sort of alpha groups, kind of what Church 101 groups? The biggest thing that boils down to is, who are you as a church organization? Your groups are ultimately going to reflect who you are as a church organization. So I know for us at Bay Hope, our groups are primarily designed around two things. They're designed around community, and they are designed around discipleship, in that order. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad order. You need community to feed into discipleship, and discipleship then kind of feeds the community wheel, and on and on and on. And so that's who we are. Mark, what is the vision of small groups with Lux Digital Church?
That's great. And I would love to know a little bit more about, because Bay Hope is such, it's not, I wouldn't say it's unique now, but a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, it really was unique in the fact that you were, Bay Hope already had an emphasis on online ministry, on some level of online groups. And I realize that you've been bolstering that, but I think it's an interesting conversation to ask if does the vision differ between your in-person small groups and your digital small groups? So I'd love to ask you that, because I'm genuinely curious about that, and then I can dive into what we see as being core and functional to our small group system.
Sure, yeah. It's actually a great question, and it's something that when I got hired back in 2019, so Mark alluded to the fact that Bay Hope kind of had a digital presence before I got there in June of 2019, which was a perfect time to kind of set my feet under the desk and really get going before the world-ending global pandemic happened in March of 2020. The group structure that I kind of had to co-opt was almost non-existent. The in-person groups themselves were based primarily around sermon series teaching, which I don't necessarily like and don't necessarily agree with. It leads to kind of short-termism. It leads to people that are only kind of living in community for 4 and 6 weeks at a time. And, the pastor will get up and he'll preach small groups for 3 weeks. Everyone will get in a small group. You'll do it for 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Most of the time, those groups end up being half full by the end of those 6 weeks. And because people are like, well, Johnny and Timmy have baseball, and, this is great. I met some people. We had dinner once, and then we're leaving. And there's no real community formed.
Where in reality, what's actually happening is that Linda in group is unbearable, so half the group left.
Man, I don't like Linda sometimes, man. She needs to
she's
stop
tough.
talking. Yeah.
She's really tough, yeah.
I've got some tips and tricks later in another episode. We can talk about actually running small groups. And AKA make Linda shut up. But so the digital groups themselves were based around, or the in-person groups were based around that. Digital groups, I brought in the philosophy of actually from a hardcore kind of online gaming background where you can really connect with people wherever, whenever, however, with your phone, with an iPad, with your computer. You can use things like Slack. You can use things like Discord. You can use things even like Facebook or just iMessage if you're on an Apple phone, where you can connect with people instantly. And so I brought those tools into the digital sphere and said, okay, how can we make it so that people can form lasting but also instant community? And not like a microwave, like, hey, 5 minutes and you've got community, but more instant connection, instant conversation. And so bringing all of that into the fold, we started grouping people. We started saying, hey, we've got 2,000 or 3,000 people that are joining us online. Let's put you into groups. And we got them organized into one big group on the big evil that is Facebook. If you use Facebook, that's fine. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And then from Facebook, we started moving people out into different areas based on different geographical regions, simply for timing aspect. It's tough for somebody on the East Coast to meet with somebody on the West Coast. There's a 3 and 4 hour difference depending on where they are. So geographical locations, but also age and stage. And we found actually that a lot of people didn't necessarily like the age and stage. We were getting a lot of 25 and 30-year-olds that wanted to be in groups with 40 and 50 and 60-year-olds, which I thought was fascinating because that doesn't happen in person. It's tough to go to a 50-year-old's house when you're 25, but it's easy to log into Ultra Live or Zoom or something and Zoom with them for an hour, gain some wisdom and gain some knowledge, and then skate out and go do your own thing. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, yeah, I think it does, and it also brings up like dozens of more questions. But when we're clarifying vision, I think that for me, my feeling as a leader has always been like do things that are clear, direct, focused, and do them for a long time. And hope that was the right call. Because what I have found is if you change visions every term, the vision that your leaders bought into will no longer be the vision that you have. You'll have multiple visions, which is division, right? It means 2 visions. Ooh. And so you don't want to have division in your small group ministry. And it's very easy for division to develop in your small group ministry because you have all of these typically small group leadership attracts people who have a desire to disciple people, who have a desire to connect with people, who have some charisma, right? Maybe they want to teach. And so having a very clear understanding about what a small group is and what the purpose of that small group is, and then doing that same thing, even when it seems like that thing isn't working, but allowing that to be consistent until it becomes baked into the culture of your church. I think it takes 5 years to change the culture of an entity. Mm-hmm. And I think that, and I don't, maybe that number's just totally made up, but I think that takes about 5 years to change the culture of an entity. I think that if you are consistently shifting or straying in your focus, it takes much longer or maybe entirely impossible. So for us at Lutz, when we started small groups, the goal has been community first. That's what we want to do. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of those is the online world is very cold. And one of the greatest tools that you have to warm that up is your small group ministry. Mm-hmm. This is more true inside of the digital expression of church or the digital branch of your church than it is in a physical church or the physical pieces of your church. Because in the physical pieces of your church, those people can mingle after service, mingle before service, sit next to each other at church. They can do a lot of those things. In the digital church, they're not going to be able to do those things as easily. Not only that, but some of these people will bump into each other, have a fire at somebody's house. They'll do some activities together in the community that aren't just going to happen naturally or easily inside your digital church. So community development is my highest priority. We want people to feel connected to other people, which is why in our gaming church, we have a lot of people who small groups who they will game together, right? They're getting together and this week they're playing Overwatch 2 together, or they're playing Jackbox games, or they're doing something together. And then from there, my next focus is actually multiplication. So our main focus is community. The next one is multiplication because we want to grow. And so in order to grow, we know that time is on our side if we focus on multiplication. And because we're not a large church yet, if we start with the right DNA now baked into us, then our groups will naturally reproduce. And our hope is to see many of our groups reproduce once a year. And we can get into the nitty gritty of that, but probably not on this episode of like, what does that look like? And how do we train people? And what are the phases? And what are the tools that we use? So we go through all of that. We don't just say, hey, who wants to be a small group leader? Let's people sign up for your small group. There's a year process that looks like for that groups multiply out of themselves. And then I think the third focus for us is discipleship or care. And I think some of those things kind of go hand in hand. I'm not nearly as concerned with people like gaining a much deeper understanding of a particular passage of scripture during their small group time as I am with the fact that they feel prayed for, supported, cared for, like they have friends who are here and they understand the overarching vision that more groups like their group need to happen in order for people to find a spiritual home here. And so once our groups leaders and our groups understand those things, I think our small group our small group systems will be really successful. And that's the aim. And we're not coming off of that target in the next couple of years.
Yeah. And it's interesting to note that you say that about necessarily the discipleship thing. What I have found, and we can get into this conversation, I think you're absolutely right. What I've seen, though, is that digital small groups are less and less about, hey, we're going to exegete every single Greek word from this passage. We're going to tear theologically down. Digital groups are less that and more almost triage for prayer, triage for instant care, for things like that. That's not to marginalize anything else, but they're, swimming in the big sea of the cold internet. It's nice to have somebody that's not just trying to troll you, and someone that actually is asking you how your day was and legitimately meaning that. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah, I think that relationships are just really, really important online, and we kind of get into this mode that and I'm going to talk about this a lot throughout the course of this podcast. But for us, one of the things that we've done from the beginning was instead of using the internet as a tool to tell our story, we've asked, how can we use the internet as a tool to hear their story? And because we've come at it from the opposite side of communication, not from because most churches see the internet as we can use this to grow our influence, right? More people can get to know about us because we're doing stuff online. But when the conversation shifts from how do we just get more people to know that we exist and more people to attend online and more people to consume our content, to how do we thoughtfully and intentionally use content that brings people into a place where we can hear their story and learn about who they are as a person, small groups become much more important. And the way that you style those small groups around the relationship, around storytelling, becomes vital to how you're doing things. Because it just becomes the whole point, right? It's that's why we're here. We're here because you need people who know your story and care about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to move on to the second part here, and we can kind of fly through the rest of these right now. But the second part of really doing a digital small group the right way is to raise up group leaders. Now, you said you had kind of a year-long training that goes along with group leaders. I want to do that in a separate episode. But when you're looking for a small group leader, a couple of things automatically stick out. And I would ask you first, Mark, when you're looking into what a small group leader should be or what they're going to be doing, what are you looking for? What are the keys that you're looking for in the people that are attending your church at that point?
That's a great question. I think, and in many ways, I'm training my leaders to look for these things, right? Because in their groups, every fall, we do 50, out of the 52 weeks, we do 26 weeks of small groups. So about half the year they're in small groups. In that first 10-week section, they're identifying who they're going to train and apprentice to replace them. And once again, we're going to get into that more deeper at another time. But some of the things that we look for is hey, who in the group looks to them as a leader? Who's already leading? You can think that you're leading. We all know people in our churches who think they're leaders and no one's following. Well, then are they really leading? Well, probably not. Do they display some level of spiritual maturity? Is there some amount of spiritual maturity that they're already displaying? Do they come with some of that baked in? Have they shown that they've been able to sort of see things through the proper lens? Are they offering to pray for members of your group? You know, when we get, hey, I'll pray for you. You have a prayer time. We have prayer time at the end. So because our groups are oriented around that, it's like, okay, at least in the first 10 weeks, we as the small group leader plan to pray for every single request. But do you have someone who's volunteering, eager to ask questions rather than to speak? I don't think people recognize how important that is, that you have listeners as your small group leaders, not speakers as your small group leaders, especially if community is the focus. If you have listeners who ask good questions, I would take that over someone who's like, I know discipleship well and I can teach you discipleship. Like, I would rather have someone who knows how to listen and knows how to ask really good questions, and then tries to organize times for fellowship outside of your group time. This will be something that will become exceedingly harder and harder that you'll notice inside of online groups rather than in-person groups. In-person groups are like naturally it's like, oh yeah, you want to go out for lunch after church this week or something? Or, you know, they'll sit with their small group member at service this week, and then afterwards, like, hey, you want to go grab coffee or something? Or, hey, we're going to have a bonfire this week and you want to come over to the house. But online groups don't have, like, there needs to be a higher level of intentionality with everything that you do with digital ministry. And so telling your group leaders, like, hey, do you keep your eye open for somebody who's like, hey, who wants to hang out this week and watch a movie, you know, online with me? Hey, does anybody want to jump in a Zoom call and chat about that this week? Or for our groups, it's like, hey, who wants to play Magic the Gathering this week or whatever? Because the gaming is what we do, and we're so used to doing that with people online anyway that it becomes very natural. And so I look for leaders who are already trying to generate community and friendship outside of our typical group time.
That's good. I would add to that as well in your group. So Lux is different in that it is, again, primarily all digital, with the occasional, and I mean very occasional, personal, physical meetup. And you have to plan that in advance. You have to kind of schedule that out and things like that. You referenced, kind of being able to do a bonfire and all that other stuff. One of the things that you need to be looking for as a physical church kind of stepping into the digital realm, or a kind of a newly formed digital church, is people that are bought into the vision that you're pitching, the vision and the mission of the church. Look for those people that are chatting in your online service streams. Look for the people that are, talking to you through DMs or tweeting you, or because there will be those people. There are going to be the people that are automatically going to buy in. There's going to be the people that you want to really hang out with online. There's going to be the people that you don't even really need to give much advance warning if a service is going up. They're always online, they're always tuned in. Even if it's just 2 or 3 people, that's 2 or 3 more people you now have on your team. Look for the people that are passionate about the community also that you're trying to reach. That goes back to clarifying the vision of the people that you're trying to reach, because you can't just say, I'm going to save everybody, because Jesus is not honored when a church says, I'm going to save everybody, because you can't do that. That's why God gave us all different stations and different areas of the country and the world to be in. Look at the people that you're trying to reach and the people that are passionate about that. And then kind of the third step is choose your platform. Choose how you're going to meet on your digital small group. We have referenced a number of them right now as a disclaimer, and you'll see any links and any sort of referral codes and things like that for one of the companies I work for, Altar Live, kind of the one-stop shop for church engagement, has live service areas, has meeting areas, has kind of lobbies and areas that you can meet with, tables and really up the engagement level. Altar Live is the best place for that, in my opinion. But there's also places like Zoom. There's also places like the Facebook Classroom feature that has just been released, which is actually surprisingly not bad. It's not as good as Altar Live. It's not as good as even Zoom or Discord, but it's not bad, and it's something that I would highly look into. Mark, again, you guys are meeting primarily on Discord now. How's that working out for you in Lux?
It's really a combination. It is on Discord, but it's also in Zoom. And it just depends on who is, like, my wife's group meets in Zoom. Oh. And the reason for that is really because our groups are pretty open. So, like, people can just drop in, and they're very public. So you can just see in Discord, in our Discord anyway, when there are people in a room, and we've just had, like, random people drop in. My wife leads a women's group. She doesn't want random gamer dudes that she doesn't know just dropping in on her group. And I don't blame her.
Talk to me why.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of reasons. But let's be real about gamer culture, right? There's 400 some people in our server. I probably know a quarter of those people, which leads about 300 people who might just, they're just sitting there one night. They're sweating it out on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 right now. And they swing over to the Discord and it's like, oh, there's 5 profile pictures and names of women in this room. I'm just going to pop in and see what's going on here. And so for that reason, like we use multiple platforms. I'm not particularly attached to a platform I don't really care all that much. I think Zoom works fine. For me, it's but face and voice is pretty important. Because you're already losing a certain amount with body language and some of the elements that you would have with someone joining a group. You're trading that, right? You're trading that because people don't have to travel. They can put their kids to bed and come downstairs without having to find babysitters. So I think people just say, what are you losing by doing small groups online? You can't eat, pizza pockets around the kitchen island before you go and sit down and talk about the Bible. You're right. You can't do that unless you all bring pizza pockets to your kitchen island with your laptop ahead of time. And you could do that. You're limited. There's some things that you lose, but the things that you gain are really beneficial for specific people in specific life stages. So using Zoom or Discord or I've never really even messed with Facebook or just FaceTime, for goodness sakes. Any of those things that are going to give you video and voice and give you that opportunity to chat. I would say one of the benefits of using something like Ultra Live, like using something like even Riverside that we're in right now, using something like Zoom, is Discord. It also has a chat feature.
Yep.
And that means that sometimes people don't want to butt in while someone else is talking and got to run to the bathroom. They'll just type, hey, quick bio break, I'll be back. And I would say having a face and voice, but also a text to chat feature. One of the other things you'll realize in the digital church is you're like, I want to reach people in, northwestern Kansas. And you'll start and you'll be like, I have 5 people from Guam. And you're like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? And you'll realize sometimes we speak English too fast for people who don't speak it or speak its second language. And they find it more comfortable to be able to talk and chat. So one guy from our church, Aiden, lives in Turkey, speaks English, but not he speaks it pretty well, but not fast, right? And so he finds it more comfortable. He comes into a chat. He doesn't turn on his camera or his voice, but he will type to us. And he likes being engaged in the conversation, even though he can't participate in the same way. So having that text chat, that sort of texting options people can read, also I've found to be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to shill for Ultra Live for just a second. It's got all that built in. It's got the face-to-face functions. It's got meeting rooms that can hold up to 500 people. It's got breakout rooms that you can kind of move directly from a live service into a lobby, into a meeting room without ever having people get off the platform. But I do want to echo almost the same thing. It's got a chat built in as well. There are going to be a ton of platforms that pop up if you just go into Google and type online church or meeting platforms or whatever. There's
video chat softwares.
Yeah, video chat software. There's a million of them out there. Pick one and stick with it. Don't flip-flop back and forth. It's just like the vision of what you're doing. Bake this into what you are doing for your online small groups. You don't want to have people moving from app to app to app. Do your research up front. Figure out your budget. If most of these are going to cost something. Some of them are pretty minimal. Some of them are pretty expensive. Figure out your budget. Figure out the time commitment that you want. Figure out the learning curve that your people are going to, and then stick with it. Don't flip flop back and forth. One of the biggest detractors that you will see happen in digital church space and in the DCN kind of posting area, we've actually talked about this a couple of times, where DCN, for those that don't know, is the Digital Church Network. We'd love for you to join the fam as well. Links are down below. Great place to kind of hang out and talk with people of like mind that are trying to get their churches up and running, more seasoned veterans, and people that are really just looking to engage with other pastors and other leaders and other mentors and all that. Okay, out of the way. One of the biggest things that's actually happened with them is that they've midstream switched from something like Zoom to something, or they've we Ultra Live something here, and I want to switch or going. You're going to lose your people, and it's the age old trying to turn a cruise ship. It takes a mile to do so, because if not, everybody falls off. And so just pick something and stick with it. The kind of the next key component then, and this is honestly the easiest component. This is where most people kind of get tripped up as well, is pick your curriculum. or pick your content. Pick what people are going to study. This is going to kind of ladder back up to your vision in that checklist. Everything, again, stems from the vision. Pick your content and your curriculum. And where we, as leaders, especially in the digital space that are used to just being able to open up Netflix and stream whatever we want. Like, hey, I want to binge all of Stranger Things. Cool. Right there for me. My content is just fed to me. Two things happen when we have that consumer mentality. Number one, we don't want to do any research because we feel like, well, if it doesn't show up on the first slide when I log into something, it's not worth my time, which is 100% false. And number two, we almost feel like, well, we need something new all the time, and I need to be able to binge it. It needs to be happening. The other thing that always happens outside of all of that, this is the biggest thing, is that leaders often put content before anything else. They feel that, well, as long as I have the content, all the other stuff is going to fill in. And that is the quickest way to lead down a blind alley with your church. If you do not have your vision set up, if you do not have your leaders set up, if you do not have your platform set up, picking the content is smoke in the wind, is dust in the wind, as Kansas or America, whatever the band is there. Sure, REO Speedwagon. It's not going to matter. People want content to drive the wagon, and that is not it. Content is the least important thing. There are a million different pieces of good content. There's more being released every day. There are study guides upon study guides for free out there. You don't even need to pay for stuff. We are going to have a list of some things that we actually kind of recommend. Mark, when you're picking out content for Lux, you guys are primarily using YouVersion and Right Now Media, correct?
Yes. And actually, I want to cycle back to something really quick because you said something that was really important in the last segment, Andy. You said, don't make people jump from one platform to the next, one thing to the next. And I want to be really clear as to why you shouldn't make people do that. The reason is because they won't. They literally just won't. They will never do it. You're like literally as a digital church leader, your number one obstacle when you get started is going to be to convince people to get on a platform. Just to be real with you, it's going to be people to get people on the up. I love Altar Live. If I was starting an online church today, I would be using Altar Live. The reason that I do not use Altar Live with our church is because my church is full of people that already embraced Twitch and Discord. It's familiar to them, they understand it, and they want to use it. And because of that, I don't have the inertia problem, right, of getting them to make the jump to something new. If you're going to make people jump to something new, all the power to you. Go for it. Do it. But don't then make them jump to something else new because they won't come with you the next time. They'll just disappear. So pick it and stick with it. Altar Live is the best one. I'll say this. If you can incorporate that with some Zoom stuff, it's also very good because what happened during the pandemic is God supernaturally trained everybody 80 and below on how to use Zoom for us in 1 year. And then he was like, hey, I've paved the way for digital church and digital expressions of discipleship to happen because I've trained everybody on how to use the same platform all at once for you. So like, just keep that in mind. It's not the best, but it's helpful because a lot of people know how to use it. Okay, the question, you had a question, and I totally lost it when I was going through this. Oh, curriculum and content. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. We have a partnership with Right Now Media, who let us use their resources for 2 years. We've used that. We have used... honestly, a lot of what we do comes from the book Sticky Church by Larry Osborne. And Sticky Church writes stuff on their weekend messages. We write questions based off of our weekly messages. And the reason that we do that is because it puts everybody on a level playing field, right? Like, nobody wants to show up to the Bible study or their small group and feel like, oh, we're going to be studying Peter this week. And it's like, I don't have any idea who Peter is. Like, who the heck is Peter? And so, that makes people uncomfortable. But if you are asking basically opinion-based questions, like, how did you feel about this? How did this impact your life? What do you think the culture feels about this, such and such? And it does come down to writing good questions, and I can't recommend Sticky Church enough because Sticky Church has a whole appendices on how to write really good small group questions. We used that a lot with my team. And, my last church, I had a question writing team. They got the message in print a week ahead of time. They read through it and they each wrote questions for it every week. And then they sent them back to us. I didn't even write the small group questions. I had a team trained them. They wrote the questions for us. That's largely what we do at Lutz. We give people access to Right Now Media, and sometimes there'll be a series that will use that, and they'll have a video that they can watch with it. But for the most part, we're talking about what the rest of the church is talking about. That's worked okay for us because it's not critical. It's just not critical to me. If my group goes the whole group time and they don't ask a single one of my questions, I don't care, as long as they're building relationship and building community together, because that's the number one primary function. And as long as in building that community, they don't become a clique and forget that we're supposed to multiply, great. And so, like, for me, it's the question of curriculum just isn't the critical question. Like, find one that you really like. If you like Right Now Media, their stuff is freaking phenomenal. Yep. I just don't orient my messages around it. And it's better if you can orient your messages around what your small groups are talking about. Because if, it lets people be on a more level playing field.
Agreed. Yeah. One other recommendation I do have, two other recommendations I do have. The Bible Project, awesome. Their new classroom feature is amazing and will help your church out. If you really want to kind of get that sort of interesting spin that Tim and John have from the Bible Project, if you have no clue what that is, links are below. You'll be able to really kind of go through their stuff. They've got some amazing things. They're a little more self-directed, so you might have to shoehorn it in. But the other big one, and this is going to go back to vision of your church, Alpha. I am a huge Alpha proponent. I love everything that Nikki Gumbel is doing and has done with Alpha. If you don't know what Alpha is, Alpha essentially started like 30 years ago at this church in northern London, where it was their outreach program for people that were not Christian. And they would invite people to a meal, and then through a series of like 12 weeks, they had kind of progressive teachings on the Bible, on what Christianity is, on who Jesus is, on who the Holy Spirit is, on why God is named the Father, all these things that ultimately built to sort of this like, hey, we would love for you to join our church type thing. Alpha has since changed into more of a digital small groups focused model that is designed to really answer the questions that culture has about Jesus, specifically those that are asking, like, why should I even care? I thought the Bible was false. Like, why should I even listen to what this book has to say? And, all of those things. Highly recommend Alpha. It's free. If you go to gotalpha.org or alphaus.org, one of those two, again, links will be below. It's free. They have amazing grouping mechanisms as well. And they have the ability to, if your digital church is doing this, you can actually post it in their little thing and it pops up on like a map. And so people that have heard of Alpha, because it is a bigger thing, people that have heard of Alpha that might want to join yours, they just simply type in some stuff, and then your church pops up, and they can join your group. And we've actually had a couple people in our own digital Alpha group. We have a guy from Pakistan who is joining us. We now have, there's that Bayhope, the guy from Pakistan. His pastor from a church in Pakistan is now joining, and we're doing it at like 7 p.m. Eastern. It's 3 a.m. their time when they join, and they wake up, and they are there, and they're present. They're bringing like 3 or 4 other people. So we've got like this little weird awesome Pakistani group joining, but we also have somebody that we'd never met just joining from California that like, hey, yeah, I saw you guys were doing Alpha. I clicked on your website. I liked what I saw, so I joined. It's like, hey, thanks for being here. We really appreciate you. All of that happened because of gotalpha.org, so highly, highly recommended there. Also, real quick, while we're on the subject, talk to me about what you guys are doing with the YouVersion in Lutz and kind of your Bible study stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really quickly, YouVersion is a really easy tool that you can use. You can go and find Bible plans on it, and then you can invite people to them. And you can invite people to them using a link that it generates, and you can share, or by friend requesting people and then clicking on your friends and inviting them. So anyone who's been part of a Bible study at Lutz, I've invited. We use it in 2 ways. One, we do Nikki Gumbel, the guy who, does a lot with Alpha. His Bible in 1 year plan on there. We pick it up at the beginning of each year, and I read through the entire Bible with a group of people. It's excellent, and it has Nikki's commentary. It's voiced. It's him reading his devotionals, and you can listen to it, which is great. So a lot of people listen to it almost like a podcast instead of actually reading it. And you can split hairs on whether you like it or you don't like it. I don't really care. They're listening to the Bible, so there's a lot of other things people could be listening to. And then we do a Bible study every single week. So we have a rotation of Bible study leaders. They pick out a Bible study. We launch it on a Friday. It officially starts each Monday. They are 4 to 7 day studies. And we have four Bible study leaders. So they each pick out one. They're short devotionals. It's just like it's a very light, like a high level introduction to reading the Bible. It gets a couple verses in their inbox, most of the week, gets a little devotional. And the cool part is at the end of each day, it gives you a place where you can comment. And so our small group leaders leave comments, our Bible study leaders lead comments, or they answer questions. And not every day, not everybody uses it, but it's been really helpful. It's been really helpful for our church. And more importantly than anything, the reminder every single week, here's a Bible study starting, here's a Bible study starting, here's a Bible study starting. It reminds our church that it's important that they're reading their Bible.
Awesome. Yeah, and all of that being said, all of that kind of coming together, the big kind of culmination of everything that you're doing with your digital church small group or your whatever church small group is advertise it and let people know that it's happening. A lot of churches are terrible at advertising. Don't be one of those churches. Talk about it, over communicate it. Something that I've had to tell our people at Bay Hope is, listen, if you are getting tired of hearing about it, your church is just now hearing it for the first time. You need to over-communicate. Emails and posts and tweets and Instagram posts and everything that you can do times 3 or 4, do that. My dogs are barking in the background because they agree with me as well. Over communicate. I know, Mark, you're very good in Discord about putting things up into the announcement area, the announcement channel, but also talking about it like 3 and 4 times. That's just a philosophical thing that I think we need to realize as a church, because like you and I both know, people have a million other things going on and they do not care unless you make them care. What's the biggest tip that you can give for advertising a small group like this?
Yeah, well, first off, people come to your church once a month. So if you've said it 4 times, if you've said it 2 times, half your church hasn't heard it.
Right.
If you've said it 4 times, your church may have all heard it once. And once isn't enough because they don't care. They literally do not care about, your small group leaders care, but they don't. So what I would say with advertising is make it consistent, but bake it all year. So when you're getting ready to launch groups, there should be this part in which we've been talking about small groups. I thought they have been. Haven't they been going on this whole time? Why? Because your pastor has been talking about small groups every week in his sermon in some capacity or another. It has to be from the pulpit. So there has to be a certain extent, or from the mic, whatever. It has to be a certain extent where it's like that. And the next thing I would say is make it really, really, really easy to sign up. No one is going to sign up for your group if they have to scan a QR code. They just don't want to. No one wants to scan a QR code.
That's a good call.
Put paper, if you're a physical church, paper and pencil. If it's almost no one signs up for our groups when we put a link in the chat and they have to fill out 3 pieces of information. Do you know where people sign up for groups? Is in our Discord. I ping them where it's happening and they have to click a thumbs up button. That is almost too much of a barrier entry for people they click a thumbs up button. That's it. So the digital equivalent of making a check mark. And for them, sometimes it's just that's too much. I'm overwhelmed. And so, you just have to put the cookies on the bottom shelf. Put the commitment on the top shelf, put the sign up on the bottom shelf. This will be the truth for across the digital church as a whole. Stop making content the hardest thing to get. Start putting your content on the bottom shelf. Start putting your commitment on the top shelf. Learn how to do that. Too often we make it seem you can come and it's fun to, and the participation pieces of it, that's on the bottom shelf, but the information's on the top shelf. You got to come to church 9 times this week or come to 3 Zoom calls in order to get the information. Get the information to people, make it easy for them to sign up, put it on the bottom shelf, make it as easy as clicking a thumbs up button. Sometimes I'm if you're interested in joining a small group, type a 5 in chat, and I will personally reach out to you and follow up with you to help you find a small group that fits you. Beyond that, this is another point. Your small group leaders have to take ownership from their groups. Small groups always are better when group leaders invite people to the groups.
Yeah.
If the group leader is expecting you to find people for them, their group will almost always fail and they will get disappointed. They'll be real excited they're doing a group and no one will sign up for it because people don't know him. In the online world, more than anybody anywhere else in the physical church, I have found that personal invites are the most important things that you do. No one will sign up to join your team. Nobody will sign up to do this, do that. No one wants to give. They all assume you're talking to somebody else in the call. You have to make a direct personal invite. I have only ever had like 2 people join our teams over the last 2 years, because I did an open call. Hey, who wants to join the team? But almost every person that I've directly asked to join the team has joined the team.
Yeah.
Build personal relationships, hear people's story, make direct asks. Same is true for small groups. Your small group leaders need to own that as well.
Well, I really enjoyed having that conversation with our good buddy Mark, and all of our information, all of our social information, as well as Altar Lives information, as well as DCN, Digital Church Networks information, as well as any of the platforms and things we talked about are going to be in the show notes below this if you are watching it on YouTube. If you are listening in audio form, you'll be able to open up your favorite podcast app and find all of the links there, as well as 2 things that are going to be critical to you. Number 1, an invitation to FAM, the Digital Church Network social media. And number 2, our handy dandy checklist. I don't know if we can use handy dandy. That might have been copywritten by Blue's Clues. I'll have to check on that. That's all going to be located in the show notes. But until next time, I'm Andy, signing off.